To go then. We're ready to start the meeting. We are in recording. I'll turn it over to you, Michael. You can introduce yourself and the topic, and we're all ears.
Okay. Can everyone see the screen and the slides?
Yes.
Awesome. Great. Well, thank you so much, everybody. Really excited to talk with you. This is my inaugural call with your user group, so super excited. I'm Michael Aldridge. I'm the Principal Program Manager with Microsoft Access. I was hoping my compatriot, Joe Jimenez, would be joining me. He's one of our key software engineers on Access, and he's been working hard on a lot of the Dataverse work that we're going to show a little bit today. But unfortunately, I think Joe had his booster shot this afternoon for COVID. And my sense is he's normally very dependable, and he may be out for the count because of his booster. So apologies on Joe not being with us, but excited to talk with you all. A little bit about my background. I joined the Access team just back in June, really, end of May, early June. So I'm kind of a newbie here compared to many of you. But I have quite a lineage at Microsoft. It's such a lineage that sometimes I wonder if it's an asset or a liability. But I actually started at Microsoft in 1994. I was the first Office product manager in the Hong Kong subsidiary, and I was actually marketing Access back then as part of what many of you may remember, or at least some of you may remember as Office Professional, which was Office 4.3, and Access was a part of that. And back then, we actually shipped software, in boxes on disks, and it was an absolute nightmare to fulfill because you ended up getting Office as, like 4 different boxes of disks that were delivered to you over several months. So I remember demoing the Northwind Traders database as part of my Office demo, and that's really where I started my career for my first 3 years at Microsoft. And then I moved on, and I've had a long career working in a lot of different areas. But for the last 10 years, 8 to 10 years, I've been working in program management, which is really on the building and shaping side of product. I came over into the Microsoft Office team about 4 years ago, and I've been leading the effort for the Office, or what was the Office Developer Program, which is now the Microsoft 365 Developer Program. And then I was asked to take on this new portfolio around Access. So I'm super excited to be here. I've been working with Microsoft 365 developers for a long time and learning what their needs are, and I'm really looking forward to hopefully learn more from you tonight than maybe you're going to learn from me. But hopefully you don't get the raw end of the deal there, and I actually teach you and show you a few things that are helpful. So thank you so much for inviting me. I'd love to, if we have time, I'd love to just get a quick intro to some of you. I know Kevin a little bit from the Denver user group session that I did a couple weeks ago, but if I could just get a little bit more information from each of you on who you are, why you're passionate about Access, and just where your location is, where you're coming from. I'm here, by the way, in Seattle, in Kirkland, Washington.
I'll start if you like. My name's Chris Arnold. I'm in the UK, so it's about 2:30 in the morning here at the moment.
Wow, breakfast express.
Yeah, well, I thought it was 12:30, and then I'm just busy working on a small development, and I thought, well, I must as well just keep on going. But I work for myself as an Access developer, or primarily Access, working mainly with industry and integrating typically corporate systems that don't talk to each other, using Access for that sort of thing.
Great.
Yeah.
And Michael, I'm David Neely. I'm here in Southwest Denver.
Oh, all right.
I'm a former dog member with Kevin. I'm a retired geologist, and my focus for using Access is to marry it to graphics.
Oh, wow. Cool. Awesome.
So,
Thank you so much. And have you been from Denver for a long time? Is that your hometown for a long time?
I've been here since '89.
Nice. Nice. Well, when I talked to the Denver user group, I actually grew up in most of my first 20 years was in outside of Denver in Evergreen and also in Capitol Hill in downtown Denver. So, all right.
Linda?
Linda?
yes, I've been working with Access since Access 1.0.
Wow.
I'm fortunate to still have several clients, and I just picked up a new one about a week or two ago. And I've been in IT about 60 years. So I started with IBM.
I've heard of that company.
I know. I once told them that someday people would say, IBM what? Good.
Not with me.
They had very, very good hardware and terrible software.
Yeah. I remember my favorite keyboard was the IBM keyboard. Awesome. Who's next?
Kevin?
Sure. I'm obviously Kevin. I've been using Access since 1.0, and I've been using SQL Server starting with a beta version of 2.0. That was back when SQL was like 4.21. Vast majority of what I've done with Access is SQL Server on the back end, Access on the front end. I've done a lot of other different things, .NET, C#, those kind of things, MVC work. I also build some add-ins for Access.
Cool.
Let's just go down the list here. Looks like Brian. Brian's the next.
I'm in Hastings in New Zealand, the other side of the Pacific.
I can barely hear you.
Oh, sorry.
Brian, I can barely hear you.
Sorry, is that better? Is that better?
Yeah, holding the mic closer to your mouth seems to improve things.
Good, good. Okay, so I'm in Hastings in New Zealand on the other side of the Pacific. Been working with Access all since, well, not quite back to 95, I think, Access 95, and had a few steps through all them. We're doing custom software for businesses, and we help them build all sorts of different applications. Some with Access backend, some with SQL, and some up in the Azure cloud. And occasionally also tying in with .NET, ASP.NET web applications to get them.
Great.
Yeah.
Okay. Kent, looks like you're up on.
Who is next?
By unmute.
Kent.
Kent.
I'm now unmuted and I've actually got my camera working. How about that, eh? Yeah, well, I'm in Brisbane, Australia, primarily a business analyst, but I do an awful lot of work with developing Access applications because that's what my clients use to run their businesses. And I've just spent most of the week building versioning stuff for my applications. So, because I export everything to text files, and I just built stuff to be able to re-import from old versions and if I need to revert and that sort of stuff. So yeah, pretty technical, but primarily a business analyst.
Great. Welcome from so far away. That's awesome. We got Australia, we got New Zealand, and we've got England. That's fantastic.
Yeah. So, Will, you're up next. It looks. Oh, I skipped over Leslie, but I'm sorry. Leslie, do you want to introduce yourself real quick?
Oh, there we go. Hi. I was in.
I can barely hear you, Leslie. I'm sorry. The microphone is really faint. I don't know if others are having the same problem.
Yeah, same thing. And now I think we may have lost her.
I can see her okay, but I can't hear her. I don't know if you can get your microphone closer to your your mouth or something.
I'm back. Hi.
Hi.
Yeah, we're not catching it all. I tell you, let's move on, and then we'll come
Yeah.
back to you in a second.
Yeah, that's fine.
Yeah.
Sorry about that, Leslie.
Yeah, we'll come back to you, Leslie. Will?
Hi, I'm Will Snow. I'm from Stanford University, and this is my first visit to your group. Thank you, George, for the invitation. Glad to be here. We have a Access front end and a SQL Server back end. Been there for about 5 or 6 years. I support a small group that does analysis of K through 12 education school choice, and they influence state and federal policy.
Oh,
And we
cool.
just love Access, and I've added the SQL Server backend, and just really like the product. Thanks.
And I like that how you have the Stanford red on your walls behind you too, right?
Yeah, I am in my home office, but I carry a little bit of the brand.
There you go.
Well, it looks like Charles. You ready? Charles, you want to tell us a little bit about yourself?
Charles is lurking.
Charles, well, we'll come back. I see.
Shane, is that my Shane?
Yeah.
Or is it a different Shane?
Hi, Michael. I've been,
Hey, it's my Shane. He made it.
yeah, I've been struggling with the audio for the last 10 minutes, but
Yeah, I had a bit of a ramp up myself, Shane.
Yeah, keep talking about it. I'm going to pass that on to the powers that be as far as
Yeah.
WebEx. But
Well,
yeah.
Shane probably doesn't need an introduction with this crowd, but go ahead and do it, Shane.
all right. I'm an engineer on the Access team. Been working on Access for a long time. Probably going to be working on Access for a while yet. So
That's good
I
news.
hope so.
Yeah, that's good news from our perspective too.
I affectionately call him my Access Yoda.
Exactly.
Awesome.
Okay, so let's
Thank you so much,
let's
Shane.
see if Tom has anything to say. Tom Wickerath.
Hi, this is Tom. Not a lot to say, but I was interested to hear tonight's presentation, so
Great.
joined.
Great.
Awesome. Thanks, Tom.
Or can we try again, Leslie?
Is that better?
I can hear you a bit. Yes.
Well, sorry, I'm close to my mic. Is that better?
Go ahead. Go ahead.
I teach. I was on another YouTube group, and I got to hear your presentation, and it came across my email that said you're going to do it again, and so I'm like, I want to go again so I can.
Okay, you're a double dipper like Kevin.
Yeah. So anyway, and
Well, I take that as a high compliment, or I'm a completely ineffective communicator, and you need to listen to me twice.
so it's just good for learning. I'm a teacher that know that repetition is important.
That's great.
As we talk,
Yeah.
I am creating final projects for my next stuff.
Awesome.
Awesome. So I think that's
Leslie.
everybody. Did we skip anyone?
I think that was everybody. Well, thanks everyone for joining. I'm going to go ahead and dive in because we've got a pretty big agenda, and I know you'll probably have some questions. So we handled the introductions. I want to talk a little bit about the journey we've been on this year. I know there's been some frustration in the community. I think it's important to be honest about it and also talk through it. So I'll want to talk about that and our updated Access Public Roadmap. Then we're going to do a deep dive into the Access Connector for Dataverse and Power Platform. That's the new announcement that we made at Ignite the beginning of November. I can't believe it's already been a month now, but we have that in public beta, and we'll do some demos. I've got a couple of videos. Unfortunately, Joe couldn't make it tonight, as I said, but I've got a couple of videos of the demos of the access scenarios that we'll quickly go through. Nathan Helgren, who is my counterpart on the Dataverse and Power Platform side, could not make this meeting, and he feels really bad he couldn't make it, but he has a personal conflict that he couldn't move. However, we have some really interesting, we have an interesting idea we want to pose to this group, as well as maybe other user groups, because I think there's a lot of interest because of this announcement. There's a lot of interest from the Access developers in better understanding Dataverse. I'm going to do the best I can to try to answer the questions that you may have on Dataverse, but by no means am I a Dataverse expert. Shane isn't either. So one of the things that we want to look at doing is a follow-up to this meeting in January. We'd like to do a workshop for all the people in the user groups, as well as MVPs, who want to do a deep dive into Dataverse and Power Platform, really from a power developer standpoint. I think one of the things that I hear in feedback from many people we've been talking to is that excitement, Leslie, or are you just dancing? Okay, that's good. One of the pieces of feedback that we've heard loud and clear from many in this community is, hey, low code, no code doesn't sound so great to me. I'm a developer. And one of the things that we want to do in that session is really do a deep dive and show some of the more powerful capabilities beyond just the low code, no code. But we do want to talk a little bit about why low code, no code is important. And it's an important trend with developers, with enterprises right now. It's a trend that we want to be a part of. It may not be a trend that some of you like, and that's totally understandable, but it's a trend that we have to look at from the big picture of our product strategy and say, hey, how do we make sure that we're ensuring that access is relevant for our customers as this trend continues? And so I will talk a little bit about that, but I also want to kind of tee up that I think, we'll have some deep dive on Dataverse that we'll try to accomplish in a separate session. And we can talk a little bit more about that in a minute. The other thing is we'd love to have people wallow in the public beta and try it out and give us feedback. I'll be talking about how you can do that. And then I've created a special survey for those of you that are double dipping and have actually done this before. If you filled out the survey already, you don't have to fill it out again. Prefer to just kind of make sure that only the people that haven't filled it out, because what I'm trying to do is, as I said, try to learn from all of you on how you feel about access. What do you think are the things that are the top things that you would like to see us be focusing on that really important to you? And so that's a way for me, without taking too much of your time in this discussion, to get some detailed feedback that I can guarantee you I take back. And I'm going to actually be using the data tomorrow, actually, in a discussion with our senior leadership on our priorities and our resourcing. So we take it very seriously, and it's quite influential in helping to influence our roadmap and where we need to go. So look forward to hearing from you on that. So let's get to the point. And literally this slide I created based off of my first meeting with some of the Access MVPs back in June, and they kind of just blurted this out when I first met them. And I want to convincingly say to you that the answer to this question is no. And I hope you walk away with that. But there's a perception that has driven this that I want to talk about. One is, a lot of people have been saying, hey, we've had no new features in 2021. I mean, hopefully the public beta of Access, the Access Connector for Dataverse, helps to alleviate some of that, but still, a lot of this feedback was, wow, no new features January until October, and it looks like there's nothing going on. And then there's only 3 blog posts for 12 months. The public roadmap up until about a month ago was completely out of date. We were showing all sorts of things that supposedly we were shipping that we weren't shipping. The forms are unclear and user feedback channels are confusing and changing. And then there was a lot of fist pounding about the monster bug and why haven't you fixed the monster bug yet? And then the other fist pounder was about the Northwind traders template and how that needed to be updated. And so there was a lot of indignation. Boy, hard to say that word at 6:53 in the evening. Indignation about that. And so really, what's really going on relative to perception? Well, the reality is we actually added engineering resources in January, but those resources have been really focused on helping us to make faster progress on our strategic focus, which was the Dataverse and Power Platform integration work that we're doing so that Access databases could easily connect and create new scenarios that customers told us about. And I'll be talking about that in a minute on why we did that. But, that really forced us, unfortunately, for many of you who were, looking forward to some of the features that were on our roadmap, it forced us to have to recalibrate what we worked on, and we had to set aside certain features because the reality at Microsoft is we are not a small family. We are a very large company of lots of different families, and the Power Platform group committed to this with us. And we had to make sure that we were in a place where we could deliver what we needed to do while they were willing to deliver what they could for us. And so we had to really seize the moment with them and basically make this big thing happen. And so that was really the strategic decision that we made. And then just as we were getting all this kicked off, we lost my predecessor for 4 months. And so, as I said to you in my introduction, I came in at the end of May, early June, and there's been a lot to clean up. It's taken me a while. There's still lots to clean up, but we're working on it. And things like the roadmap have been updated. There's one thing that's still not done, but we'll talk about that in a minute. But we're trying to make progress. The other thing in terms of community, the forums, boy, yeah, this was not a proud moment for us at Microsoft. I'll just be honest. We were using a service called User Voice. It was a third-party service, and the powers that be, this is some of you that live and/or work with other large companies may feel this from time to time, that there are large forces at work beyond your control, and that's really what happened to us. And we essentially, the company decided to move away from User Voice, but they really didn't think through the transition of how that was going to get migrated. It's been very bumpy. We lost some data, but thanks to some MVPs that have helped us out, we've been able to rebuild some of that and put that into a new place, which is the Access community link. And normally I'd paste it into the chat, but I don't have access to chat right now. So this will be one of the links that I provide you, but you can look for this. It's the feedbackportal.microsoft.com is the main URL, and the new Access community is there. And we encourage you to go in there and make sure that you take a look at feedback there and contribute. And if there is something missing that you remember you put into User Voice, put it back for us. We apologize that you may have to do that. We've tried to rebuild everything based on what we were able to learn from the snapping of this from it was a few months old. It wasn't completely up to date, but we've tried to rebuild it. And so anyway, we ask for your forgiveness on what our company kind of did to us, and hope that you can use this and we can get that on a better path. So on the monster bug is a priority, and I'm going to show you in the real roadmap on this. But Shane, I think this is a great opportunity where Shane's actually been thinking and working on this. It's not an easy problem for us to solve, and we need your help. For those of you that know, this is the database inconsistency bug that a lot of people have been asking for. It's something that I have heard consistently in all the conferences that I've talked to and the user groups and the MVPs. Shane, you want to talk a little bit about the help that you could use from the community to figure out how we repro this, because and we just carve out a quick aside here just for a few minutes, but it would be helpful if you could talk through, because we have a challenge in reproing this bug and getting it consistently so that we can really nail down some of the root causes of this.
So I see Leslie asked, what is the monster bug? So first, this is the bug that for some people, typically using large numbers of users in a single database or a backend, you'll get an error message that says that your database is in an inconsistent state, and it offers to repair it for you. As far as we know, this doesn't generally lead to actual data loss. Nothing's really corrupted, but there's a problem with basically with the network caching, so that the local version of ACE doesn't see something that has been written to the shared file. And so it thinks it's been corrupted and tells you this, gives you this scary message that makes you think something wrong. We worked with the Windows engineers and figured out that ACE was doing something. It was relying on Windows behavior, basically network file sharing behavior that it shouldn't have. And that's the thing that we made a change to address. However, when we sent that change out into production, it caused some new problems, which we're still tracking down. And part of the problem with this issue that makes it difficult for us to fix is that we don't have a way to just make it happen so that we can see the bug and then apply the fix and then confirm that the bug no longer happens. Basically, we get reports of this from people outside Microsoft. Some people see it with some frequency. Some people see it very rarely. We do have some telemetry collection giving us information about what circumstances it happens under and so forth. But it's still a tricky problem for us to nail down. One of the things that conceivably could be useful is that if we had an organization that was hitting this problem with some frequency and was willing to take like special builds that they could distribute, and I know that's a lot to ask for customers, which is why we haven't had people jumping up to volunteer, and we have to have a customer that's actually hitting the problem significantly. That might be helpful for us to have a more isolated environment to determine whether or not any fix we make is actually addressing the underlying issue, because there could be multiple problems, and the fix that we've made might not be sufficient, but we haven't been able to determine that for certain.
Yeah. So really appreciate, Shane, you kind of giving better context there. So I think if any of you out there know, if any of you out there can help, or if you know of organizations that are facing this, that and you feel like you could reproduce this in a reliable way, I think we'd love to hear from you. So my email is, you can reach me in email if you want, mikeald@microsoft.com. I'll put it in the chat when I have access. By the way, for those of you that don't know, I don't have access to chat, so I can't see your questions. So I apologize that I'm not going to. So just ask questions if you can verbally. Otherwise, I won't be able to see them until after I stop presenting. Okay. Finally, Northwind. Just quickly, we want to work on Northwind. We've got some people that are volunteering from the community that want to help us update the Northwind templates, and we, if you want to join in that effort, let me know, because I'm trying to put together a working group of volunteers who are willing to roll up their sleeves and help to try to figure out how to modernize that. But it is something we want to try to work on. But we really need the community's help here, because we are pretty taxed in terms of resourcing. And if we could get the community to help, kind of as our own little community open source project to figure out how we get this updated and modernized, that would be super helpful. So just let you know on that. So again, I talked a little bit about the roadmap. This is what it looked like before. This is what it should look like now, with one exception. The monster bug, which is actually not labeled publicly monster bug for obvious reasons, we will call it the database inconsistency fix, but it should be on the roadmap. I'm hoping this week. I keep saying that. I had to go through a whole rigmarole with the powers that be at Microsoft because they said, well, why is a bug fix on the roadmap? And I said, because it's very important and people care about it. So they said, well, is it a feature? Well, I said, it's not a feature, but it's really important and people care about it. And so anyway, it's going to get on the roadmap, I hope, this week. I finally got an email today that I think all the approvals have been done, and you will be seeing that. So that's the one thing missing on the public roadmap, but everything else here it should be exactly as I'm showing you right now. So let's just quickly walk through this. We have the Power Platform Dataverse Connector that we're going to dig into a little bit here. That's already in public beta, and we hope to GA that in Q2 of calendar year 2022. So Q2 for us means that we're hoping by March, April timeframe, certainly before build, that we will have GA there. On the monster bug, right now that's now looking at Q2 that we will hopefully work on that. Much depends on how successful we are at finding some help in replicating it to better diagnose it. So I think Shane's already talked about that. The graph data connector, I know many of you were waiting for it. We are trying to re-engage on that work as soon as we can get the Dataverse connector work finished. And we're hoping that will GA before the end of H2 2022, which would be sometime in May timeframe, we hope. And then the new web browser control that supports the Chromium Edge browser that some people may know, the internal name is Anaheim. We're not sure if you know about that, but that is something that the team is working on, or it's not working on now, but they will be working on. We've actually done some work for it, but we had to set that aside, and we'll be re-engaging on that as soon as the Power Platform work's done. And then we're probably going to GA that sometime in the second half of 2022. These are sort of in order of what our priority is. We have to do the Chromium browser work because I know a lot of people are excited about the SQL Monaco editor and the work that we want to do there, but we can't do that work unless we have the Chromium work done first. So there's dependency there. And then we also have enabling large access aware for 32-bit access. And that's coming also in the second half of calendar year 2022. Any questions about this before I move on? And please make them verbal.
Yeah, I have one question about the large address aware. I mean, there's been some discussion, and I'm not involved deeply, but there's been some discussion about why that's taking so long to do. What are the issues that you're facing there in making it happen, but making it happen safely?
Yeah, that's actually exactly the right question, because it's easy to make happen. The problem is making sure that we don't break anything in that process. And actually, when Excel went through this process of enabling it, they did in fact find a number of things where code in the product was making certain assumptions that weren't valid in large address aware mode, and they had to fix those things. So we need to go through that same process and then also do as much validation as we can, because this is a change that once we make, if we break stuff, then it's going to cause a lot of pain. So we don't want to break things. And so we need to be able to take the time to thoroughly vet the changes that we make so that we can validate that it's not going to break people when we send it out to production.
And to be fair, on top of that, it's not just about the complexity of making sure you don't break anything. It's just the fact that we have to be focusing on certain things and not other things right now, because we only have so many resources. And so that's also part of the sequencing here, to be fair. But absolutely, from Shane's point of view, just in terms of what Shane said, there's going to have to be a lot of testing here to make sure we don't break people. Okay, any other questions on the roadmap? No? Great. If more questions come to mind, we can still talk about them later on. So there are a bunch of questions that George posed to me, and I think I put them in the slide deck. And I'll come to those in a minute. But George was kind enough to, I think he surveyed some of you to get some of your questions that you had based on what you've heard so far from our Ignite announcement. So I think fundamentally what I'd like to start with is, why did we make this decision about Dataverse? Well, at the end of the day, we have a strategy, and many of you are benefiting from it right now because I heard a lot of SQL usage from many of you. And we have to work to make sure access is relevant in a cloud-based world if we want access to be relevant. And we have a lot of strengths in access. We have a huge base of users. We've got lots of line of business apps, thanks to many of you. And actually a lot of people really love access because it's a great rapid application development platform. And in many ways is the original low code, no code solution development. A lot of people don't agree with that. There's some people that rubs them the wrong way because they're, they take pride in their craft and they're, they're very advanced developers and they do very advanced things with Access. We're not taking any of that away from you, but it's also one of the things that made Access successful was that you could create solutions very easily. And that's kind of the trend right now in the industry, but it's in the cloud. And so some of the challenges that customers have told us and that they face are things like security with access solutions, compliance, and the other thing are scenarios and flexibility with form factors like mobile and collaboration apps like Teams. And what customers have really been saying to us is that they want to create hybrid solutions that can keep the value and ease of use of access, but get the value-added cloud-based storage and app scenarios that they're looking for. And so that there's a lot of really cool capabilities that Dataverse helps us to realize. And I wanted to, this is kind of an eye chart, I call this an eye chart slide, but I wanted to capture George's questions because he sent these questions ahead of time. I really appreciate it, George. And I'm hoping in the context of this presentation that we will answer some of these questions. And I'm not going to read through all of these, but George and the group, you can keep me honest on if I don't address any of these by the end of my presentation, because I've tried to keep these in mind as we talk through what we're doing. So if you look at when we had user voice, we had a lot of feedback in user voice around what customers were looking for. They wanted to be able to upload data and apps into the cloud. They wanted to have mobile solutions. They wanted to integrate Access with PowerApps. And these are just some of the examples of the user voice requests that we had. So that was really some of the impetus behind why we went down the route of creating a connector for Dataverse and Power Platform. But there's also some pretty interesting data in terms of the trends out there. This is from Slash data as of August 2021, and some pretty interesting trends around low code and no code. So 1/3 of developers globally are using no or low code tools, and the usage is highest in North America, while Western Europe lags. So the usage of low code, no code is also highest among the less experienced developers, 1 to 5 years. And Google AppSheet and and Microsoft PowerApps are some of the dominant solutions, where 51% of developers who are using a single low or no code tool are using either AppSheet or PowerApps. Now, the interesting thing is that PowerApps has actually become the clear choice for the large enterprise developers. Among the largest enterprises, we're actually capturing double the market share of Google. And again, this isn't our data, this is Slash data. They're looking at that, but you can sort of see the trend of low code, no code. And then here you can see the overall share in terms of us versus Google. We're very tightly aligned. And then PowerApps and Power Platform are significantly higher share. It's that light blue this light blue bar represents PowerApps in the large companies. And so I guess, why am I sharing this data with you? Because I want you to know that there is an important trend that we need to make sure we're attaching ourselves to, and that's why Power Platform and Dataverse are like, if Nathan were here, he would tell you that their usage over the last 3 years has tripled. It is just growing by leaps and bounds, and so it's important for us to get connected to a high growth platform, because if we are not, we could be left behind. All of us, in the Access community, we don't want that to happen. We want to be able to keep Access relevant. So, oops, sorry, I got ahead of myself. So, what we announced at Ignite was really that we're adding Power Platform and Dataverse through the connector work that Shane and the team have been building, along with the connector work we've done with Azure SQL and SharePoint. And this is not at the expense of one or the other. And I think a lot of people, in some of the questions that I saw posed, and some of the reactions, they think, oh, we're trying to convince you to not use Azure SQL. We're trying to convince you to migrate everything over to Power Platform. That's not the case. What we're wanting is to give people choice, give people options. And we'll talk a little bit about that later. But if there are people out there that are using SQL today with Access and they're having a great experience and loving it, like many of you have just said, we're okay with that. That's fantastic. We want you to keep doing it. But what we're trying to do is create new opportunities and growth in these trends that we see in the marketplace. So hopefully that helps to clear up some of those questions that you might have. So how does the Access Dataverse Connector unlock new capabilities? Well, as I said, it's really going to offer these hybrid solutions that really tap the ease of use of Access together with cloud-based storage, particularly around mobile and team scenarios. Mobile scenarios have been a huge pain point for us for many years. This actually enables some pretty cool capabilities so that you could keep the value of what you created in Access, but then work with Dataverse and be able to actually create mobile front ends. And we're going to actually show you in a demo how you can actually create a mobile front end and be able to actually have both the Access front end and the mobile front end see the same data between the two databases. So it's really cool. It allows synchronization there in a way that's pretty cool. Real-time sharing and editing and access of data. Real-time sharing and editing of Access data using the cloud-based data stores and having front-end apps that are created in Access, in PowerApps Mobile, and in Microsoft Teams. That's really critical. And then the other critical area that customers have really, particularly large enterprises, have said, look, we really need new security and compliance capabilities through cloud storage using AED and role-based security while we could still manage it from Access. So that's one of the things that this also helps us to realize. I'll probably not do as good a job as Nathan on this, but I will do my best. In terms of what is Power Platform, it's actually a very rich set of capabilities. And really, Dataverse is at the heart of this as the engine, if you will, the database engine for the Power Platform. But PowerApps provides the low-code, no-code ability to create apps and the ability to go mobile. Automate is a way to create business process automation that can create emails, automatically triggering emails, generate orders, sort of workflow capabilities. And then Power BI is a fantastic way of a reporting capability to create dashboards. We use Power BI in everything we do at Microsoft. And then Power Virtual Agents allow you to create chatbots that use your data to answer user questions and trigger workflows. So lots of cool capabilities that allow you to do things where you're not having to build them from scratch. So at this point, I'm going to quickly migrate over to the video, and I'm going to have Nathan virtually in video talk to you about the demos in terms of the capabilities really quick. This is, and I apologize that this isn't live, but I think given the COVID problem that we have had with Joe and his booster vaccination, I wanted to make sure that we at least got you these videos. The video that I'm showing you is actually the exact same demo that we showed at Ignite. So if you want to see the Ignite presentation and you haven't seen that, it's only about 20 minutes, but it's very much the same presentation I'm giving you today, but I'm giving you even more information than we could squeeze into 20 minutes. So let me quickly switch screens real quick. And I'm going to make this full screen, and I'm going to play this. And I think we tested this earlier and everybody could hear it, but if you can't hear it, give me a signal.
Some specific key benefits you can achieve by using the new connector with Dataverse and the Power Platform is you save time migrating using the Access Migration tool, which simplifies the process. Migrations can take minutes instead of hours or days. Also, you can use your existing Access forms and Power Apps on the same data at the same time. Expand your data story and reduce manual efforts using the Power Platform applications. So let's see those benefits in action. In this demo, we will use a database and form used for cleaning services in a hotel. Daily, the service staff fill out paper forms as they clean and resupply the rooms, order replacement supplies, and fill up their carts. These forms would be turned in at the end of the shift. Then, someone would have to enter those paper sheets into Access manually. Also, then, someone would have to manually create any orders from the data. So let's see how the Power Platform can improve this. Earlier, I created a map to show how Power Apps can add data to Access after migration. Here's my Access database that I connected to Power Apps. And here's my phone with Power Apps on it. I'll run Power Apps and pick my app. I'll tell it to add a new row. I'll name this Phone Test. And now I'll add some dates. Add a drop-down value and a number, and then save it. Now you can see the new record saved down here. And if I refresh Access, you can see the record in Access. So how did we do it? Here's our Access database, and it has multiple tables that store items in stock or the recording the room check stats and the cart fill requests. Each of these would have a paper log that would be entered into Access after each shift was done. So now let's migrate. To migrate from Access to Dataverse in the Power Platform, follow a few simple steps. Right-click a table and select Export and Dataverse. Select the table or tables you want to migrate, and you can select all of them at once if you want to save time. Then select your Dataverse environment from the list provided. This list will show all the Dataverse environments associated with your account. So you choose to review this list of tables now and see which tables are going to be migrated over and which relationships. By default, Access is going to create linked tables for each one of these so that it can link the form back into Dataverse. This will allow the user to continue to use and manage their data when they're using the Access client and continue to process it that way as well. So click Next. So this is the validator. It's going to make sure you're only trying to migrate data that can be supported by Dataverse. If we migrated data over that we did not support, you'd see errors here for any data that's not supported. So if the validation says okay and it's complete, then we can go ahead and move forward. So at this point, I'm going to skip forward a little bit in time to preserve the demo, but be aware this will take several minutes. When it's done, you'll see this confirmation screen. Once the migration is complete, you can see all the linked tables in Access. And you can also see that a backup was created for all the tables to preserve data if there were any issues. So now we're going to switch over to Power Apps and look at the Dataverse database. When we go here, you can see all the tables that were migrated. You can check them to see the relationships were there. And you can also make sure your data was migrated. So let's create a quick app, the one that I just showed you. So we're going to go to Create and then select Dataverse in the Start from Data section. Now you pick your environment and the table you want to use to build your app. So Power Apps is going to create the app with a gallery list, a record view, and an add and edit feature automatically for you. Okay, now that the app is done, I'm just going to customize the view and then edit some pages to show a few of my fields. I'm going to speed this up right now to save a little bit of time so you don't have to watch me go through this. Okay, when that's done, I'm going to select the first page and test the app. I'll just go ahead and add a card ID. I'll add in some dates for check-in and checkout. And I'll add a couple different items on the cart order. Okay, now that that's been done, you can see the new record present. I'm going to switch back over to Access and show you that now in Access, the record's automatically visible because the form is linked to Dataverse. We do have to refresh the screen because Access isn't going to auto refresh once the data shows up in Dataverse. So now I can add a new row in Access and show you that it's going to show up in Dataverse. And see here, as I've entered in the data, you can go back to Dataverse and see that the data has migrated properly. And now I'm going to jump back to Access, and I'm going to use one of the forms that I had. And this is going to be really quick because we've already seen data being entered, but I'm going to click the form. I'll add in a little bit of the data, and I'll save it. And when I go back to Dataverse, you can see that the record from the form also immediately available. So right now, I can use both my Access client and PowerApps on the same data. If I'm happy with this, I can save it and publish it and assign it to users. Let me show you one more thing. I don't have time to demo all of this, but here's an example of how you can use a PowerAutomate with the same process. I created this automate flow that is going to look every time a record is added or updated on the cart database, and it's going to create a new row in the order database, and I'm telling it what data I want it to move over. And so every time a row is submitted, a row will be submitted to the orders database at the same time with that same data. Here's a quick recap of what we just did. You start your migration in Access. The Access validator makes sure all the data you're migrating is supported by Dataverse. The data is migrated into Dataverse, including the tables, relationships, and the content. Users can keep using their existing Access forms to submit their status and orders using data that lives in Dataverse. And at the same time, you can build mobile Power Apps using that exact same data and use both at the same time. You can only migrate your data to one database. So you'll need to choose if you want to use the full version of Dataverse with Power Apps, or if you want to use Microsoft Teams to supply apps to users. Here are a few points to consider. With Dataverse for Teams, it comes included as part of a Microsoft 365 E3 or E5 license. All the apps and flows and such that you create are used inside of Teams. You won't have access to the customer data type or multiple transaction currencies that are in the full version of Dataverse. Not every control is available for use in Teams, for example, the barcode reader. And there's a maximum capacity of 2 gigabytes. Large files are stored in the blob to save money, but there's no auditing capability. With the full version, requires you to have a Power App or Dynamics 365 license. Your apps can be used on any device so long as you have licenses for the users. You have access to all data types and all controls. You start with 10 gigabytes of storage, and then you can increase it from there if you need to. And you get the benefit of blob and log storage, which reduces the cost of storing large files and audit logs. Plus, developers have the ability to use direct APIs and build plugins.
Let me stop right there before we head into the next demo, because I want to make sure. I know there were a bunch of questions that were going on in chat, but I can't see them. And we do have Shane here as well, and happy to try to go through those. If someone wants to, I don't know, if someone wants to go ahead and kind of reflect what their questions were, Shane and I'll be happy to try to answer.
Yeah, Shane is in chat, so he's probably in the best position to read and answer the questions without an intermediary.
Yeah, and if Shane's in chat and he's been helping to answer questions, thank you, Shane. I can't see it.
Yeah, I was just trying to see if there's questions that I haven't answered. Actually, if somebody has a question in chat that I didn't answer, maybe we can just do it out loud.
Okay, the one that I noted was, what proportion of federal government developers are using Power Apps? Do you have any info on that?
Actually, I don't know. I don't have that answer. However, having said that, there's a bunch of federal government agencies that are actually on our beta testing team, and they were very interested in it in the Department of Interior. So, and we are able to, the beta is actually working for GCC tenants. But I don't have that for you, and I'm not sure. Nate, that would be a question for Nathan, I'm afraid, in terms of how much PowerApps usage is happening in the federal government. Is that the right question that I should be asking?
I think so. The next question I have here is there an upgrade path from Dataverse to Azure as there is from Access to SQL Server?
Yeah, it's not really the same situation. Dataverse ultimately does use Azure as its storage, but it doesn't expose it directly to the users because it builds a lot of functionality on top. And if you were to directly access its Azure storage tables, they would, you could potentially break Dataverse, right? So they control access through their interfaces. But so it's not really an upsizing to go from Dataverse to Azure. And certainly it's a legitimate scenario to put your data in SQL Azure. You can still build PowerApps off of that storage and build Access apps that connect to that storage.
I have.
What you don't get is some of the things that work that that Dataverse is built specifically to support scenarios and PowerApps that Azure isn't optimized for. It isn't designed to support those scenarios. So it's just Dataverse and Dataverse is built on top of Azure, but it's a different environment. So I think the short answer to your question is no. If you had your data in Dataverse, there's no sort of upsizing thing, but there are various ways you could migrate the data, but it's really a Dataverse question at that point, not an Access question. Unless you were using Access to bring the data into Access and then move the data to Azure, which you could do potentially.
So there was one more question. I think you've addressed this in the chat, but I wanted to bring it out. Does Dataverse maintain referential integrity between tables and
Yeah, so it has similar options to Access. For example, if you want to say, when I delete this record, should it delete child records or should it not allow the delete if there are child records? It has lookups that are similar, that work in a way that's similar to Access. Everything's not exactly the same, but when you export, we actually do try to maintain the referential integrity that exists in the Access application in the Dataverse environment where they overlap, and there's a lot of overlap.
Well, that makes me a bit uncomfortable. I've been working with PowerApps on SharePoint lists with lookup fields, and I'm finding it not much better than in Access as an experience. Will it be more smooth?
I'm sorry. What? Can you say that again?
Well,
George, we couldn't hear you very well. If you could speak a little
sorry,
louder. Sorry.
Oh, I'm sorry. I will lean down and
there you go.
Kiss
Thank
the
you.
microphone. I have been working with SharePoint lists in PowerApps, and I'm finding that lookup fields are not my favorite part of that experience.
Lookup fields in Dataverse?
So is it going to be smoother when we have the same mechanism, the same lookup field?
Are your lookup fields, sorry, we're confused on where your lookup fields are. Is it lookup fields in SharePoint or in PowerApps?
In SharePoint lists.
Okay.
I'm connecting PowerApps to SharePoint lists. I mean, they work, but it's a lot more hassle than I would want. And I'm wondering if that's going to be a smoother experience.
Yeah, I think you'll definitely find if your data is in Dataverse, your lookups and your PowerApps will be smoother than if your data is in SharePoint. Okay. Because that's part of what that whole combined package of Dataverse plus PowerApps is intended to work super well together. That's where the PowerApps work best when your data is in Dataverse. That's part of the reason why we're focused on this migration.
Okay, so I get it. Thanks.
And actually, I have to drop unless there's anything.
Oh.
Any last questions somebody wants to get on?
If there's any other burning technical questions that you have around Access or RoadMap or the Dataverse work, it's a great time to ask them now. Otherwise, if I can't answer them, then I'll definitely get you answers from Shane and the team afterwards.
So I'll answer David's last question, which is multi-valued fields. Dataverse does actually support a narrow type of multi-valued fields. They call it a multi-choice field. They don't support multi-valued fields where it's actually a lookup to another table. In those cases, you can migrate the table. We just won't move those fields.
And then just before you go, Shane, I've got one, if I may. Validation. Is there any means to validate your data in Dataverse prior to saving the record? And yeah, we'll go with that one.
Yeah, so that's part of the low code. Dataverse does have ways I don't know if you've used, well, you do it in your PowerApps. You would write expressions that do validation. I don't know if you've used PowerApps, but their model is more Excel-like, where you have you write expressions. They're a lot more data-oriented and powerful in some ways than Excel expressions. But you can do data validation. Say, as a simple example, just make sure this number is bigger than 10 or whatever like that. You can do that sort of validation in Dataverse. Yeah. We don't attempt to migrate. For example, if you have a field with a validation expression on it in an access table, we do not attempt to migrate those rules because there's too much difference between how it works in Access and it works in Dataverse. So that's something, if you migrated your data, you would have to manually fix do that kind of a validation on the Dataverse / PowerApp side.
Cool. Thanks, Shane.
Chris had one last question. I just wanted to make sure, Shane, if you could hang on for one more.
Sure.
Please, quick one. It's back on this the upsizing situation. If we put everything into Dataverse, my understanding is Access is 2 gig. My understanding is Dataverse is 10 gig. If you need more capacity than that, what do you do? If you run out of room, do you?
Yeah, actually, I'm not sure the answer to that question. I don't know what the Dataverse limitations are offhand, and whether or not there are ways to make them bigger. I mean, I wouldn't be surprised, for example, if they have various plan levels where you can pay more to get more, but I'm not sure.
Okay. Yeah.
So
Thank you.
Your concern is that even though Dataverse is bigger, that you might need more than what Dataverse?
Yes. Yeah. It partly depends. I noticed, for example, that you can't put up rich text up there, which is not in principle a problem, but you can, if you've got people who are putting in text of books and things like that, then you can end up with running out of space. I haven't really worked out on 10 gig, but I have had the situation where I've upgraded clients from Access backend, an ACE backend, to SQL Server Express, which is a 10 gig limit. And then subsequently moving them on to, I moved on to Azure in the end, but
okay. So
it was just a case of running out of room.
SQL Express, your SQL Express experience is kind of a canary in the coal mine for what you're worried about with Dataverse. That's fair.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
I'll try to get an answer to you on what options are there for expanding off of the basic subscription, if you will.
Yeah, the clients who got that sort of thing have got quite a bit of money, so it's not really a cost question. It's more to do with the ability to actually do it, and you're not effectively going down a dead end and can't turn around and come back out.
Okay. Leslie had an off-topic question.
But I don't want to. This is really off.
Does it have to do with COVID or the weather, or is it?
It has to do with our program that I'm following. So I have a question for you after a few minutes.
Okay, I can't really hear you, so let's circle back. Let's circle back at the end. Okay, thank you. So let me show you the second demo real quick, everybody. By the way, I can go long. I'm sorry we've gone a little bit long. I probably spent too much time trying to learn about you guys so that I can have a better understanding of your backgrounds. If everyone can go long, I'm happy to go long. George?
Michael, we've gone as long as 2 hours.
Okay, I just want to be respectful of people's time, but I totally am willing to go long. When we did the Denver version of this, we did it for an hour and a half, so I've tried to squeeze in probably too much content in an hour. But we'll
know when people drop off that we've gone too long.
Okay, appreciate your perseverance with me on this. So let me show you the second demo. This is really now taking the same scenario but doing it with Dataverse for Teams. And it's really important to know that you do have to make a strategic choice based on the scenario you're looking to design for. If you want to do a mobile scenario, then you got to use Dataverse. If you want to do a team scenario, then you want to use Dataverse for Teams. But you can't basically try to go to Dataverse and then do Dataverse for Teams. You can't basically do Teams and mobile together from the same data source. So that's a bit of an ugly, I guess, that we'll be honest about. That you do have to be kind of mindful in your thinking about what are the scenarios important to your client, your customer, or your end user. Hopefully that is helpful for you. So let me just quickly play this video where he walks through the team scenario, and then we'll come back and address some of the questions. I know people were asking about supported data types and non-supported data types, and I've got lots of good detail there, as well as about SQL comparisons and SharePoint comparisons that people asked.
If you were considering Dataverse for Teams, here's how you can use Teams and the Power Platform for the same scenario we just did. To migrate Access data to Dataverse for Teams, first you need to enable PowerApps on your Teams by downloading the app. You must create your first app in order for your database to be set up for the migration. Select Start Now, and then selecting the team you want to associate it to. You don't have to finish it, but you need to get past the naming stage so that it creates your Dataverse instance for the whole team. Now that the database is ready, let's go back to Access to migrate. So here's another copy of our unmigrated Access data. The migration steps are the same. You only need to pick your team's environment from the list. I'll show the migration, but I'm going to speed it up because the steps are exactly the same. After it's migrated, you can check the tables and teams and also create a quick app similar to how we did in PowerApps. So to access your tables and content, click Build, make sure your appropriate team is selected, and then you can click on the table. And to review your data, click Edit Data. Now I'll create a quick app in Teams and configure it. I'm going to speed this up just a little bit. I'll add a row, and you can see it in Access just like in the last demo. The primary difference is that this can only be accessed in Microsoft Teams by team members. Now let's go back to Access. We can refresh the data and see the data we just added in Teams. And now we'll submit a new row using the existing form. And then we save it. Now, back in PowerApps, we can click on the Build menu, select our table, and then choose to edit the data, and you can see the new data is available. Here's what we just did. You migrate your data using the same tool, and the validator checks the data eligibility. The data is migrated into Dataverse for Teams, including tables, relationships, and content. Users keep using their existing forms, and at the same time, you can build PowerApps inside of Teams, and your team members can use the apps.
Nathan, those are great examples of what you can achieve using the Access Connector for Dataverse and Power Platform. All right. Well, you don't need to see that part because you've actually got the live version. Okay. So let me switch back to our presentation real quick. So I've actually changed the presentation and updated it based on some of your questions that George posed, and I want to go through some of these. And certainly I'm happy to provide George the presentation for those people that are starting to drop off if you want the presentation as a reference, but I guess you're recording it, so that's good.
Yeah, what'll happen is we'll upload this to YouTube.
Okay, great. So one of the big questions that people have is, hey, this whole low code, no code for Dataverse, is this just low code, no code? No, it's often, we're very much often targeting for low code, no code, but you know, and that is a really powerful benefit for some user segments, as we were talking about. But there's also a lot of capabilities for advanced developers with numerous ways to work with your data and applications. So I'm not going to read through all of these, but this is the kind of stuff that we'd love to dive deeper into in our Dataverse workshop in January. And what we're thinking of doing to really dive into this is we would have a workshop that would allow all the people in user groups like yours, and we just invite you all to join us. And then we do a one-time event that's recorded, and that way everyone can benefit from it. And if you can't join, then we would post it up on YouTube or other places so that you can actually get the benefit of that deeper understanding of Dataverse. So hopefully that's something that would be attractive to you, but I did want to provide a little bit more meat around this, and Nathan was kind enough to help provide some of this content. The other thing I want to be clear on, based on some of the questions and concerns, is, hey, we still love SQL, excuse me. We are not asking anybody to move away from SQL or replace Access. If it works for you and you love it, keep using it. It's just that we're offering another option for customers, and particularly those customers who may not have SQL skills or the people and the infrastructure to really manage the SQL environment. And as you heard from Shane earlier, Dataverse is actually built and uses Azure SQL. So it's just another flavor of Azure SQL in a way. So comparing Power Platform and Dataverse with SQL, let's get to the meat of why this might be attractive for some people. So as I said, it's not designed to replace it, but it's designed to look at how we could provide it for organizations who don't have SQL skills. Azure SQL has great relational storage, as many of you know, but it's not low code, no code. It has a learning curve and requires specialized skills. Storage options, whereas basically Dataverse has a lot of capabilities that are pre-built. And so we'll talk about that in a minute. But storage options that store data for the best performance and most cost effective, really things like relational storage in SQL, Azure Blob Storage, and Cosmos Storage. Dataverse handles the performance, the stability, and the disaster recovery without a SQL administrator. So we really abstract away some of those things that a SQL administrator would do. So that can be very attractive to companies who don't have those kinds of capabilities or expertise. Again, it's just adding new options and capabilities and flexibility. It's not trying to say move away from SQL. We're not saying that at all. The other area that people talked about was about SharePoint versus Dataverse, and I know George, I think, was talking a little bit about this. So basically, there's a few things to consider. And again, we're not trying to basically make people migrate away. It's just more of a comparison and contrast. So if you look at the number of calls per minute that SharePoint can handle, it only allows about 600 calls per minute, and Dataverse allows about 6,000 calls per 5 minutes, which is double the volume of SharePoint. SharePoint doesn't really have relational data management. It doesn't have a lifecycle management. All the work is kind of in a prod environment. And support for rows of data and in lists. SharePoint has 100K to 30 million with limited storage capacity. And there's no business processing in terms of duplicates and analysis. And then this is stuff that we could also deep dive into later on in that Dataverse workshop if you want. Again, I'm not the Dataverse expert here compared to SharePoint, but I was able to make sure we provided at least some information for you related to this question.
Thank you.
Oops, looks like this is a slide that got messed up. So we'll just go on to data type support. So I know there was a question I saw it flash in the chat, which I can't get to right now. So the if you can look at the areas where we have full support, in dark green, these are the things that we support today. I won't read them off for the sake of everybody. And then lighter green are the support where we have some max value limits. And then the areas that are coming soon that we know we are going to support, it's just going to take some time, are rich text and large numbers or big int. Some of the future features that we're looking at and considering is, number single, number double, calculated, OLE, many-to-many relationships, and date time extended. If you want, you can actually get more detailed documentation on this by taking your mobile phone up to that QR code in the corner of the slide, and it'll take you there, so you can see that. Any questions about this? Because I know there were some questions. Did this answer your questions, or are there still outstanding questions you have on data type support? Okay, silence means I guess we can move on. So what happens to your unsupported types and sizes? So this, I'm just going to build this slide out. It's a bit of a complicated build, so I'm just going to build it out completely. But it kind of gives you a flow chart of what happens with the data, with the Access Data Validator. So if it meets type and size requirements, then the tables are migrated to Dataverse. If it doesn't, then basically it will migrate only the supported data, and the unsupported tables and the data stored, are in Access in a separate table. That's how that works. Now, this is an updated version of the slide that Nathan showed in the video, and I just want to highlight a couple of things that I want to make sure you take away. One is that while we said in the video it's E3 and E5, it's actually more than just those SKUs of Microsoft 365. And in fact, Business Basic is even a way in which Dataverse for Teams, you can get that for less than $5 a month. So there's a wide variety of Microsoft 365 SKUs that include Dataverse for Teams. And that's kind of a nice advantage, because if you've already got these Microsoft 365 licenses, or your client does, then they get the capability of Dataverse for Teams for free, versus having to pay for the full version of Dataverse. There is another additional update that we have since we made that video, is that there is a not just a 2 GB max size limit in the Dataverse for Teams, but also a 1 million record limit. So want to just make sure we give you that specific those specific updates from when we originally cut that video. To the earlier comment about the Dataverse full version, you do have 10 GB of storage, but there is ability to increase. I do think it comes with additional costs, but I can find out for you and get more specifics on that as a follow-up. So in summary, Access with Dataverse and Power Platform gives you the best of Access with flexibility and security in the cloud. It's helping you enable mobile solutions, added security and compliance with AAD, enabling new Teams solution scenarios, and cloud client synchronization across different front ends. So if any of you are interested, if you haven't gone to the public beta website, you can point your phone to this QR code on the screen right now, and or go to the URL, aka.ms, Access and Power Platform. And there's a web page there that'll walk you through the steps on how to join the beta program. All you really have to do is, if you're already in E3 or E5, you can join the Office Insiders program to basically get the public beta. And then there's also information on the website on how you get a trial version of Dataverse, and how to prepare your trial version for use with the Access Dataverse Connector. So finally, I know it's been a long road and it's quite late, but at this point, for those of you, if you could, we'd love to have you fill out a 5-minute survey. You can do it after this or tomorrow if possible. We want to hear from you and we want you to answer 3 fundamental questions. And once I exit out of sharing my screen, I'll put this link as well in the chat so that you can access it. But really, that's the end of my presentation, and we can have open Q&A, or people can go to sleep.
I really, really appreciate it, Michael. You know,
Was this
covered a lot
was this
of
helpful? Did you
fundamental
guys,
stuff.
did you feel like this was helpful information? I'm also interested to know if we're hitting the right level, or if you wanted to go even more technical, because I can certainly make sure that we tune this in the future for this audience.
I have a hard time saying that from my perspective, and I can only speak for myself. I found it all very useful because I don't know too much about Dataverse. You know, the last time, back when I was an Access MVP 2 years ago, 3 years ago, we were hearing about what was then called Common Data Service or something.
Oh yeah, I think I just found out how to get to chat.
And so, you know, I kind of lost touch with it. So it was this, I had the same experience with PowerApps. I'd sort of drifted away thinking, well, there's not a lot there. But when I reconnected, I realized it's come a long, long ways. And it's important for us as Access developers, I think, to re-engage with this part. We have not followed it closely. It's time to get back in touch with what we're doing here, because
That's great to hear that it was a positive. It's been a positive experience. I think that's great to hear. Basically, hopefully everybody just saw I figured out how to get chat running. Again, I'm sorry, I'm not a WebEx power user, clearly. So I sent the link to the forums there. That's the link to the survey, I should say. All you have to do is click on that link and be able to fill that out and give me feedback. And again, you don't have to do that now. If you're too blurry-eyed and tired, you can do it in the morning. But it would be great to hear your thoughts so that I can incorporate it into our data for our roadmap. And then there was another link I wanted to give you in terms of the community. I'm going to go back up there and find that link. Sorry. This is the Access Community portal link. There we go. Okay. Any other questions that people have? I'm going to stop sharing for the moment so I can see you all better.
I'm just going to time out, but Michael, I really found this very useful. Very good overview, and I'm anxious to learn more about the January event, the workshop. So thank you, George, also for inviting me, and I'll definitely stay in the loop here. So thank you very much for the time tonight.
Great to hear, Will. Thank you. Thank you for. I'm glad I was your inaugural experience in the user group.
Yeah,
a little scary for me.
Anyway, so thank you all.
Thanks.
We really appreciate that you wanted to do this and offered to do it with our groups. I mean, there are at least, what, 5 other groups in Juan's organization that'll all be happy to schedule you in if you have the time.
Oh, absolutely. And it's one of the things, as I noted early in my presentation, it's one of the things I want to fix is making sure that we're engaging with you as often as is needed. Obviously, this is a session where we have a lot to talk about that's new, but I'm totally open to hearing from you and the group other ways that you would love to see better interaction between the Access product team and the user groups. Certainly, as I said, we love to get help from the community on core challenges that we have, much like what we were talking about with the monster bug, and also in addressing some things that the community also wants, like trying to fix the Northwind Traders template. But if there's other ideas that you have, please share them with me, or share them through George, and George will send them my way. But it's certainly wonderful to make all of your acquaintance, and I'm impressed that a couple of you actually went through this twice.
Yeah, that's impressive. Of course, they're the guys who we count on to make it all run. So appreciate you showing up. So again, I think
Leslie,
there was one other question that was in the chat.
Linda, you're saying you can't get to the survey? Is anybody else not able to get to the survey?
Got it.
Yes, I just tried and I'm getting all kinds of crazy stuff. Can you try it on your computer?
I got it.
Maybe I'm using the wrong link.
Some other people were able to get it. So
Yeah, I got it.
I'm trying to use what? The H forms, office access, whatever this thing is.
No, just hold your phone up and take a picture of that QR code, which is no longer there.
yeah, if you, I can get you the QR code here. Just 1 second. I'll put it back up. Sorry.
Well, not so much the QR. What's the HTTP address?
It's in the chat.
I'm trying to use it and I get really crazy stuff.
Well, let me try it myself and see if I can't get to it.
Yeah, I mean, look, I have a lot of trouble with directions.
Okay, WebEx is showing that you're going to an external site and it's asking if you want to continue. So I did get a warning message that's from WebEx, and then I click OK, and I can get to it. So
I just got it.
Okay, awesome. No worries.
Fantastic. All right, so this was the all right, got it.
Amazing. It's amazing when technology actually works, isn't it?
It absolutely is amazing, and frustrating when it doesn't.
Okay, sorry, I'm seeing all the stuff that was happening in chat while I was talking. If there's anything else that you want to chat about, or I mean want to talk about, I'm happy to stay. Otherwise, it's hitting up about 8 o'clock, and I'd love to get some dinner at some point.
Oh yeah, so yeah, I appreciate you staying longer. I know
No, my pleasure.
Yeah, we
totally worth every minute.
Our all-time record was 2 hours, and that was probably too much for most of us because we were all getting a little bit punched drunk.
Okay.
But I think Leslie did have one question.
Yes, I remember, Leslie, you did. Let's see if I can hear it.
Can you hear me enough?
Yes.
So at my college, we are evaluating what to teach as far as deep database plugins for SQL servers, and I was just trying to since we work at Microsoft, what you thought the best tools are for front end tools for SQL server.
Okay. So let me make sure I heard your question. So you were asking me what do I think are the best front end tools for SQL Server for your SQL training class?
Well, that we could teach students, yeah.
Let me get back to you on that, because I'd actually love to also get the thoughts from my engineering team on this, because there's actually a neat mix of developers like Shane that have been around a long time, but there's also Joe, who couldn't make it tonight, who just is a fairly young graduate from University of Washington's Computer Science School. So if you don't mind, Leslie, let me do a poll from them and I'll get back to you. Is that okay? Great. Awesome. All right. Well, if there's nothing else, just, thank you, everybody. It was awesome to meet you all, and hope this isn't the last time. And and I will definitely get back to you on the workshop, the Dataverse workshop for developers. We will target that probably for the second week. I'm thinking right now we don't have a date yet, but thinking about the second week of January, because everyone will be back from holiday and hopefully have dug out of their inboxes by then. And then we can target maybe the second week of January to try to do that. Is a time like this the best time for us to do that kind of workshop?
Yes.
So if we were to do it like from 6 to 8, from 6 to 8 p.m., is that going to be too late for folks that are like in Denver and other places, or like what do we feel the optimal time would be for us?
I can't say. I'm retired. I don't care.
Linda's in New York, so this is probably kind of late for her, right, Linda?
No, it isn't.
Okay.
Linda,
Don't get to sleep.
you're in New York State.
Look, I was saying before, I had a meeting with one of my clients from 3 a.m. to 5 a.m. It doesn't matter. I work at home. I work remotely. I take naps during the day. I'm fine. I don't care. It could be 2 in the morning.
Okay.
Where do you live, Linda? I didn't catch that.
One of the things I'd like to ask is this. Okay. What I've been doing is I have clients who need remote access, but they use something like either GoToAssist or more recently Splashtop. So therefore, they can use the full access and the full version without any, Dataverse, cloud, anything. Why should they not use that?
Oh, that's an interesting question. So, sorry, what were the things that your customers were using in order to remote?
They are using it, and very successfully. Now,
RDP.
one of the things they use is Splashtop, which costs $100 a year.
So
And
is
they
this
have
like
a laptop at home.
is this a
then just
virtualization?
log in.
It's a virtualization technology,
It's
basically.
remote desktop.
It's like remote desktop.
Yeah.
Yes, exactly. And it works fine for them. Why would they go to Dataverse?
If it works fine for them, they don't have to.
Okay.
I don't think they're probably going to be using it on their phone. And I don't know how well a remote data thing scales if you have 100 or 1,000 users.
Yeah.
But if you've got a handful of users, that's the cheapest way to do it.
Okay. I don't have 100 or 1,000 users.
Yeah.
Usually it's a small company or a small department in a company. And the other thing is, you're right. I can see the advantage if you have a mobile phone. That's a good point.
Yeah.
Only if it's a Windows phone.
That was a. I just want you to know, David, I've been using an iPhone for 10 plus years.
If I could find a Windows phone, I'd buy it tomorrow.
There's a lot of people out there that feel that way.
David, I've got one in the drawer right over there. I'll sell you cheap.
Okay. And that was called Splashtop, Linda?
Splashtop. And the thing that's amazing to me is that for $99, a year, they have phenomenal customer service. I thought, I use GoToAssist, which is a whole lot more expensive. I'm grandfathered in because I participated in the survey, but it's still like $500-600 a year. But Splashtop is only $99, and it works very, very well. I use GoToAssist so I can get into. I remote to all my clients, as I say, some of whom I've never met.
I worked that way for years. People that I never met. But I just picked up another question in the chat that maybe we can address real quickly. This is from Tom. I think Tom is still here. Do you want to ask your question yourself about private cloud, Tom, or?
Yeah, sure. So I wrote it in the cloud, but so I'm former Boeing company, and my understanding is that they did not use the public cloud. They had an internal cloud.
Yep.
And so for these larger companies, that have ITAR data consideration, international tariffs and trade and or whatever it stands for, is there going to be an internal Dataverse offering for them so that if we spool up with Dataverse skills, we're not at a roadblock for companies like the Boeing company, for example?
Yeah, that's interesting. I mean, that's an interesting question. I was just thinking through because on some levels, like with the government who has somewhat similar but different potentially needs, we guide people to GCC, and we have a whole cloud infrastructure strategy that's specific for the government to cater to their needs. But I am not sure about your question, and I think that's a great question. I appreciate you asking it. I wish I had an answer for you right now, but I don't. But let me let me add that to the ones that I need to get answers to.
Sure.
Um,
Thank you.
And this is my fault. I always do this. I get caught up in the discussion and forget to watch the clock, which is my.
That's okay. Thank you, everybody. I really appreciate it. And Leslie, I will definitely get back to you.
Great. So you've
Look,
got
thanks for the presentation. I mean, really.
You're welcome. You're welcome, Linda.
It took effort and I really appreciate it. And look, I've learned something and it's true. If I did have a mobile phone application, this looks like a good choice.
Great.
I think
Thanks, everybody. Take care.
Thank
really
you.
great
Good
to see
night.
you
I'll have the video
Graham, thank you.
processed over the weekend. It'll be available early next week.
Okay. Sounds great. Thanks so much.
Thank you.
Okay. Bye.
Good night, everybody.
Good night.
Good night.
George.
Well, before we go, I just remembered something else. It may be too late. We've lost a lot of people, but please, suggestions for future presentations, submit them through the AUG website. We lucked into this when he was available, and that was wonderful. But if you have
It's
ideas,
very impressive that you got somebody from Microsoft to do this. So
yeah, and he's a much. I was very impressed by the presentation.
yes.
I
mean, yeah.
But anyway, I will wrap it up by just saying,
you understand how I feel.
any input on future presentations, either topic or presenters, I'd appreciate
Sure.
that. I think I've got one lined up for next month, but
Good.
there's always room for new suggestions.
Look, I can always throw something together if you need it.
I will hold you to that.
Really, I always have, I've got tons of stuff I have.
So I'm going to end the recording there.
All right.